Today, I'll be talking about bipartisanship in the policy process. Bipartisanship is when two political parties in the United States, typically the Democratic and Republican parties, come together in agreement despite typically opposing each other. Ideally, bipartisanship means compromise, cooperation, and shared goals. In contrast, partisanship is the support of a political party, ideology, action, etc., without careful judgment of the full matter. Halbridge, Malhotra, and Harrison conducted two key studies examining what the public think bipartisanship really means in practice. In their first study, they looked at a less prominent policy issue where both parties wanted similar outcomes. The findings showed that people did not prefer bipartisan compromise over a clear partisan win in action. Study 2 looked at a high-profile policy domain where partisan identity tends to be stronger. Again, the same pattern emerged. Bipartisan compromise was not preferred, even when the compromise could lead to beneficial policy results for their party. Across both studies, compromise was often seen as a party loss, not a collective gain. This highlights a major challenge that political identity shapes political judgment. These findings connect directly to the work of Jonathan Haidt, who argues that partisan affiliation becomes a form of social identity. Party loyalty influences how people interpret information, judge policy, and react to compromise. So if a bipartisan policy is beneficial, these people may oppose it because it feels like their party is losing to the opposing side. This helps explain why bipartisanship is so difficult to achieve in modern policy processes. Even when compromise would help solve a problem and benefit both parties, partisan identity often outweighs policy outcomes. Republicans introduced a stopgap funding bill, which would be a temporary fix to keep the government open. However, the bill included cuts to the Affordable Care Act tax credits, or originally known as Obamacare. These cuts would increase healthcare costs for many Americans who rely on this coverage. Because Democrats would not agree to these cuts, the two parties were unable to pass funding legislation and led to the government shutdown. Again, we see how partisanship shapes behavior, that even when the public will benefit from keeping the government open, neither side wanted to be seen as yielding to the other. This is exactly what the research highlighted. Compromise is perceived as losing even when it helps solve an urgent problem, such as the government shutting down.